The recording has started.
Alrighty, we'll get started then. Hey everybody, my name is Madeline. I am one of the members of the ACRL Dual Standards Committee. So today we're going to be doing an IDEA deep dive. So next slide. Somehow, there we go. I was like, who has it? Um, so in this webinar, we're gonna, right now we're doing a little introduction as we do. Then we're gonna briefly touch on the current landscape of IDEA topics, especially in academia. And then we're gonna look at how IDEA in the distance and online learning context is being covered at our own individual institutions. So myself and my colleagues on the committee. Then we're going to look at the Dole Standards Toolkit, and then in the end, we'll open up for questions and other things like that. Next slide. There we go. So just really, really briefly, the standard that we are basing this webinar on is the DEIA standard in DOLS, which says the library supports diversity and inclusivity through culturally relevant and responsive practices in support of distance and online learning communities. Also, just to make sure we all know what this stands for, IDEA or DEIA, whichever way you want to say it, is inclusion, diversity, um, equity, and accessibility. And so we're going to be touching on the different elements of that throughout today's presentation. And I'm going to hand it over to Melissa.
Um, so the current landscape of IDEA, we're aware that the landscape of IDEA has been changing, mostly depending on what state you're in. Most of our presentation will focus on accessibility, but we do have resources for the ID and E part of IDEA as well. We hope you'll be able to learn about useful resources and practices for your specific situations and libraries during this presentation.
Alrighty, back to me. So as I said, my name is Madeline. I work at the University of Cincinnati. I work at one of our 10, 12, depending on how you do the math that day, one of our many branch libraries. So my role, in addition to um, a lot of web-based responsibilities that I have, which I'm going to talk about today in part, I'm also a subject librarian for three different schools here at UC, and I do a lot of library instruction. I do selection, things like that. So the things I'm going to be talking about in terms of web accessibility, I'm going to look at some initiatives at UC that librarians and library staff participate in. I'm going to look at some efforts internal to UC libraries, and then also things I do for web accessibility. So next slide. So, some UC-wide efforts. I actually just did my training, I think on Monday or Friday. The days of the week are a blur. Something at UC that we have to do every couple years is what we call EIT training. It's electronic information technology, EIT accessibility training. So this is a training that is on Canvas and it's like a self-enroll course. And in that training, we learn about how to make accessible Word documents, how to make accessible PowerPoints, how to make sure you have proper captioning, how to make web pages accessible, things like that. And I'm pretty sure last time I checked, I think all my colleagues in the libraries go through EIT training every couple of years. Just because we all have different responsibilities, whether we use LibGuides, whether we are making handouts for classes, you're right, we all run the game in different tasks. So we all do EIT training. Another thing I want to point out, and this is kind of in the second image, which I know looks like a bit of a weird image. The web platform that UC uses for um, for the website is called AEM. It's an Adobe product, but some of the presets that UC has includes that if you insert an image online, like for the website, it requires you to do the accessibility functionalities for that image, or the image will not be posted online. So that's a really nice feature. I manage our web presence for my library, and I'm very forgetful. So having that as like a built-in fail-safe has been amazing for me because I'm kind of forgetful. Next slide. All right, so things going on in UC Library specifically. I will fully disclose I'm not directly involved in some of these efforts, but I know they're going on. So we have a task force right now talking about all the changes to Title II. We have a librarian at my institution who, among her other jobs, she is also our dedicated accessibility person. So whenever there's like accessibility issues going on, or changes that need to be made, she's the one that gets pulled in for those conversations. And right now she is chairing up a Title II task force. This task force was um, called for by our Dean of Libraries. So they're going through to figure out how we need to make changes to our content for Title II, and what that looks like for the libraries. I know both her and our collections AD, I believe our collections AD, are also communicating with a lot of our ebook vendors about um, about Title II as well, because a lot of ebook platforms are not as accessible as you would think, and so that's also part of the conversation. And then, like many of you, we all use a LibGuides platform here. We have probably too many LibGuides. We have a lot of LibGuides here at UC, and LibGuides platform makes it very easy to keep things accessible, which I appreciate. Um, and over the years, there's been various like workshops and things that have happened about LibGuides and LibGuides accessibility. So we all work hard on that as well. And then here's some things I'm currently working on. So as I mentioned, I manage my branch library's web presence. I work with my colleagues and we figure out what we want to put online. I might present ideas, but I do most of the legwork for our web presence here. And so one thing we're currently working on is adding better like questions, call outs to our different web pages we have for my particular branch library. We have a very clear contact page and things like that, but making it easier for folks to be on a web page of our site and knowing how to get help. And part of the reason why this is an accessibility effort is that in the past, some of our pages have just had a little like blurb sentence with like, oh yeah, you can email us, you can call us, like a little blurb sentence. Um, with this new initiative we're doing is that there's going to be a proper web heading, right? So it's not just going to be a sentence, it's going to be a proper like H2 level web heading that says questions or contact us. So someone using a screen reader, it'd be much easier for them to find the contact information on our web pages. And now no one is going to have to scroll around indefinitely, go back 4 pages to find the contact info. So this is definitely an accessibility thing, but also just think this is just like a nice web best practice thing that we're working on right now. And then I'm really, really looking forward to getting this project wrapped up soon. We're waiting on a couple things to finalize before I can wrap this up, but I'm looking forward to it. So those are the things going on at UC and in my role about web accessibility for the libraries.
Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Melissa Atkinson. I am a co-chair for this Dole Standards Committee. I am at Abilene Christian University in Abilene, Texas. I'm the director of distance and online library services there. Um, at our library, in our department, we emphasize accessibility. So we have transcripts and closed captions. We're adding those to all of our videos. And we use Vimeo to point students to our videos, and it now has an auto closed caption option feature. We used to use YouTube because YouTube had that feature, but now Vimeo has it, which is really great. We do requests from our alpha services for alternative media if requested from students, such as screen readable PDFs, images, or documents for library resources. Um, our instructional design team has accessibility standards that we adhere to. So for videos, we already do the transcripts and closed captioning. And for PDFs, they need to be screen reader friendly. And then they also use UDL, the Universal Design for Learning, which is instruction design standards for all types of learners. And we'll have more information on that in the toolkit, which Amanda will cover in a few minutes. And then EBSCO Discovery, which is what we use at our library, has incorporated a way to listen to articles that have that they have within their system. So not anything outside of EBSCO, but within their system, they have a way to listen to the articles, which is really helpful. And we have answered a few questions from students wanting to know if that was a possibility, and it is. Um, and then our collections support a diverse programs for our online and residential programs. We have arts and humanities, sciences, social sciences, health sciences, behavioral sciences, business, health and human services, and biblical studies. And some of these programs have specific library resource requirements, like for SACS, that's, the accreditation purposes, or, more specific discipline specific requirements that we need to fulfill. And we do fulfill those needs.
Okay, thank you. My name is Amanda Hahn. I work at Liberty University in Virginia. I'm the head of the Research and Instruction Department. And the thing about going third is I'm going to talk about some things that have already been covered a little bit because I know a lot of us are doing some similar things in this area. There are some general best practices that you'll find across libraries, but I'm still excited to share some of those with you. So one thing I wanted to mention was it can be really helpful to partner with other offices on your campus. So one thing we did was we collaborated with our Office of Disability Accommodation Support. I realize your office on your campus might have a different name, but that's what ours is called. And we had met because several of our computers in the library have accessibility software installed. Kurzweil is one, Dragon, Jaws. There's a fourth one that I can't remember off the top of my head. And we met just to go over what do some of these softwares look like? How do they operate? So we could get a sense of if students need help using them, kind of what we could do to assist. That is not to say that we became experts in how to use all of these softwares. I'm certainly not an expert, and that was not the expectation. But the idea was to get this basic understanding of what it looked like, what students might be seeing, what their experience might be using it, so that we could assist as needed. And how that translates into helping our distant students is that sometimes we will have students contact us, they're a distant student, and they might be using one of these softwares. It might be a different one, but it might offer a lot of the same or similar options or similar experience. So it helped us to kind of just get a sense of how do some of these programs work? What questions might we need to ask as we're working with students that let us know that they're using one of these softwares? So for those that are using screen readers, sometimes that means we take them on a different route through the library website because it's reading link by link. And you're not going to say, okay, we'll go to the bottom left of the page. Because if you're going link by link, it's going to take them a while to get to that link. So you want to think about, is there a shorter route to get there? Maybe using one of our headers at the top or something of that nature. So even kind of having a sense of those different questions that we might want to ask or asking about what particular capabilities are offered by your screen reader so that we can help them navigate the library website effectively to find what they need. So again, I do not say that to say we're experts in these softwares. It also helped us be aware of okay, what type of questions come in where now we know, okay, these are the questions that we need to refer to this office because we've gone beyond what our initial understanding is. But we were able to condense a lot of that for an internal LibGuide that we can reference that just has some screenshots and again talks about those different capabilities. Captions, I know Melissa talked about that. That's something we do as well for our video tutorials. We use a platform called Kaltura. That's where all of our video content is posted. So it does have some machine generated captions that will automatically create captions for us. We generally go back after that and tweak them, but they've gotten a lot better since I've started recording videos. I've seen those improve quite a bit. Um, and you never realize what words maybe you say a little different until you go back and look at the captions and you're like, oh, it had no idea what I was saying. How can I rephrase that for my next video? So we also do captioning for our webinars that we do throughout the year that are recorded. So we'll upload those to that same platform and also put those captions on there. We also offer recordings to students. So often when we do like a virtual research appointment with our online students, we use Microsoft Teams for that. So there are some recording capabilities, and we'll ask the student if they want the session recorded so that they can go back and watch that later, which gives them the option to turn on those captions or to pause it and follow along. It just gives them a little bit of extra assistance. Usually students are very open to that, but we always ask in case they don't want to be recorded. We certainly don't want to pressure them into that, but many of them like to have it as a copy, as a reference, so that as they're working on things later, they can refer back to that. And we do regular review of our web content and our web pages. I'm less directly involved in that process. We have a team of people from the library that partner with IT to review our website, but that's certainly something that we're looking at as well. And then, like Melissa mentioned, we also have collections that support a lot of different programs. So making sure we have a variety of resources to meet both our residential needs and our online needs. We work a lot with departments to make sure that we are getting adequate databases for their programs, but also equivalent ebooks to what a residential student might find in a physical book here in the library or a reference material, something from our reference collection. So that's certainly an important part of what we do as well. All right, so a few links that we wanted to talk about. I know we said that this was going to be a deep dive, and as we started putting this together, we were like, oh my goodness, there's so much here. You could do a deep dive for a week straight. So we wanted to make sure that we linked out to a lot of the resources that have already been gathered together for you in the DOLS toolkit. So let's see if these links want to work. Yes, okay, good. So we do have a collection here of anti-racism and EDI resources. And as you scroll down, what you'll see a lot of linked materials here. So we have articles for reading, we have specific resources relating to pedagogy, broken out into these different subcategories. So again, it would take us a very long time to kind of even attempt to sum all of this up for one webinar, but we wanted to make sure we were pointing you towards where you can access these resources later for yourself if there's a particular area that you want to dive into more. So a few different categories here, getting into disability advocacy, universal design for learning, digital accessibility, and so on. So some of these are library specific, some of these are looking more broadly at a topic, but plenty of reading here if you wanted to add to your reading list. And then the other two that we have linked to is there's a separate page for accessibility resources specifically, looking at things like screen readers and different guidelines that you might want to just kind of be familiar with and see how you're doing as you look in these various areas of your teaching materials and your web pages and your LibGuides. There's a lot of great resources linked here. And there's some free online tools that you can use to check web pages or things like this, checking color contrast, and just kind of giving, again, best practices as you think through these different areas. I often find that's helpful because there's some tools that I use more than others. So it might not, be every day that I'm working on a table and thinking about, oh yeah, what's the best way to make sure this table is accessible? So it's nice for me to have a reference and go back and kind of refresh my memory. And then the last one we have linked here is to our standards toolkit, specific to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility standard. Again, lots of great materials here. You'll see some benchmarks here. So these are some suggested benchmarks that you can use as you're thinking about how you're meeting this criteria for your distance and online learning populations. And then again, some great tools that you'll find linked here to help you in these different areas. So lots of different content available on that DOLS website and through that toolkit. So as we navigate back, I think our final element here was just to thank you for coming. We would love to open it up for questions. Like Melissa mentioned at the beginning, we know that this is an area where the landscape has just been changing a lot in recent months. Even in our committee, we're all from different states, and we have some from public schools and some from private schools, and all of that factors into how this is being talked about and addressed. So I know it is a lot to think about, but we would love to hear what you're doing at your schools or answer any questions that you may have. If you'd want to, excuse me, if you want to put any of those into the chat, we'd be happy to address those. Thank you, Melissa, for dropping those links in the chat. Is there an issue with copyright if a student shares your recorded reference session? I'm not sure what context they would be sharing it in. Generally, it's just us having a conversation, looking through some materials. So it's not something I've come across. I don't anticipate there being a problem.
So John asked, have any of you had conversations about how ADA Title II will affect online learning? I've only learned the basics, but I'd love to hear from others. Um, I also have not had these conversations directly, but I've done my own brief read of Title II, and I think it's going to definitely have a bit of an impact. It also kind of depends on how much support your institution is giving. But yeah, if others have had Title II conversations, I would love to hear more about that also. I will just very, very briefly say the little bits of Title II I have read. Um, um, Actually, I mean, I support these changes that they're making. Basically, a lot of the changes going on in Title II right now, if you're not familiar, they are I forgot the word I'm looking for, but they're making it more clear. They're really calling out like web content, accessibility much more directly. They're calling out the document content, accessibility. They're talking about archived web content. So they're making it much more clear that like everything has to be accessible, and calling out those different things, which I personally think is overdue. So I'm happy it's happening. I know I mean, it's inconvenient, right? It's not really inconvenient. We should be doing this anyway. But I know this is making things complicated sometimes.
Yeah, I see a question about making tutorials accessible. For us, primarily up to this point, we've been doing video tutorials, so the captioning has been a big piece for us. It's really interesting that you mention Articulate because we just got a license at the library and I've just started dipping my toes into it and playing around with it a little bit. So if you have tips on how to create tutorials, I would love to talk to you later. I might need to go to your library website and scope out some of your tutorials to get a good feel for it. Um, So I have not tested yet how well they interact with screen readers, but I think it's helpful even just to put that into something like your workflow of as you're creating things, always having it somewhere kind of in your checklist of testing it with a screen reader or a different device to see how it appears. I would look specifically for Articulate Rise 360. Um, I would check their support pages and I would see if they mention anything about that. I would suspect that they would, um, but that's probably where I would go first.
I do want to give a shout out to Brittany Ballard, who just had posed a question in our chat. She's our incoming Doles chair. And if you have any questions about Doles, maybe you want to join if you're not already a member, you can contact her. I think she'll give her contact information in the chat a little later. But I don't have any initiatives to answer her question, but maybe someone else does.
Brittany, as far as upcoming initiatives, we are working toward hopefully a LibGuide redesign with some templates and some standardizing. Um, I think we've had some that have been more accessible than others, just because they've been updated at different times, and we haven't done maybe like a thorough audit of all of them recently. So I'm excited about kind of bringing all of those up to the same accessibility standard and doing a review of those. Yeah, the AI question is a great one. That still feels a little bit like the Wild West to me. I think it raises some really interesting questions. I've had conversations with our Office of Academic Integrity, even regarding AI tools within databases and what's okay versus what's giving us pause. Um, in the context of inclusivity and accessibility, I think there's a lot of really great potential there. I don't know that I've explored specific tools. Oh, I saw one, something was linked. Thank you for that. Thanks, Brittany. Um, but I think it has the potential to really open up resources, maybe in some new ways.
I forgot where I heard this. I think like a team was working on this locally at UC, like piloting something. But I heard that some folks somewhere are working on an AI that can more or less like navigate Canvas for the student. So instead of a student having to click through to find their assignments or find their this, they could use an AI to be like, when's my next assignment due? What grade did I get on this paper? Where is there a rubric for yada yada? And they can basically use an AI to navigate Canvas. And I don't know, like, what phase this project is in, of course, but like I think that's a really, really cool. I think it's both good for accessibility, and I also think it's just a good, like, user experience thing because every professor organizes Canvas differently, and I can't be bothered to know who puts things where, right? So I think that's a really cool idea for accessibility and just general user experience.
Well, I just want to thank everyone that's put in some questions or raised some topics for discussions. They're also interesting to think about, like these different directions that we're going in and kind of hearing what you all are seeing at your institutions and the directions that you're looking in and thinking about. And thank you for those that have been sharing links in there. I love hearing what other librarians are using so that we're not all trying to reinvent the wheel. So anytime you have a great resource that you want to put in there, we definitely support that. Um, and I don't see any final questions. We can give it another minute or two before we end, but I did want to make sure that we just thank you all for taking some time today to stop in our webinar and have this discussion with us. Brittany put her information in there. Oh, sorry. I wasn't going to make you restart the recording. I just wanted to point out that it was there, that her contact information was there in the chat if anyone was interested in joining GOLS and helping out as we look more at how to support our distance and online learning programs. So thank you all for taking the time today.
Yes, thank you for all for coming.